I spent 3 months painting Starry Night for Neil. Days later, I saw it on eBay, a simp's gift. Cheap. He never noticed the love letter I'd hidden inside. I bought it back and moved on. Until he found me, voice shaking, I was wrong. Please, give it back. This video is an original creation of the YouTube channel Romance Grove. Enjoy. For Neil's birthday, I spent 3 full months painting a replica of Starry Night just for him. But only a few days later, I saw my painting listed on eBay. The caption read, "A simp's gift. Selling cheap." He hadn't even looked at it carefully, otherwise he would have seen the love letter I had hidden in the folds of the canvas. I bought the painting back and told myself I was finally done with him. But later, he blocked my way, voice trembling as he pleaded, "I was wrong. Can you please give the painting back?" One day, while scrolling through Weibo, I came across a post with pictures, bought a painting off eBay, and found a love letter hidden inside. What should I do? Should I contact the seller? My fingers trembled slightly as I tapped the image. It was a painting of a starry night in oils. Every brushstroke was painfully familiar. Because I had painted it, every single stroke, over the course of 3 painstaking months. Neil once casually mentioned that he liked Van Gogh, so I secretly remembered it. For his birthday, I recreated Starry Night just for him. And tucked within the seams was a love letter I had poured all my courage into writing. I revised it again and again over several days, and still wasn't satisfied. In the end, I nervously slipped it into the painting anyway. But he hadn't even looked at it properly. All he wrote in the listing was a few careless words, "A simp's gift. Selling cheap." I bit my lower lip so hard it stung. A metallic taste spread across my tongue. But all I could feel was the sharp, gut-wrenching pain of my heart being torn open. I always knew he didn't like me. I just didn't expect him to trample on my feelings so cruelly. Comments quickly piled up under the post. "You can tell a lot of effort went into this painting. How could someone treat it like that? Even if you don't like the person, you can't just insult them and call them a simp. Don't tell him. He clearly didn't care about it. Saying anything won't change that." I lowered my eyes and left a comment, "Hello, I'm the person who gave that painting as a gift. May I buy it back from you? You can name the price. Thank you." It had taken me 3 months, and who knows how many canvases, to create that painting. I didn't want it to become a discarded joke that people sneer at. Even if, that's what it already was. The account owner turned out to be a kind girl. She replied quickly. Not only did she call Neil a jerk, she also comforted me for a long time. In the end, we were both surprised to find out we attended the same university. So we decided to meet the next day to exchange the painting in person. That night, I lay in my dorm bed, staring up at the mottled ceiling, as darkness swept in and wrapped me in a sudden, quiet sorrow. Neil was always the most dazzling person in any crowd. I had always known someone like him could never like someone as ordinary and dull as me. But after loving him for so long, I just wanted him to know how I felt. We met in high school, back when I had just transferred to his school after my parents' divorce. Neither of my parents had been very present during my childhood. After the divorce, they quickly remarried and neither of them wanted custody of the burden that was me. They even hurled insults at each other in court, trying to push me off onto the other. In the end, it was my grandmother who took me in out of pity. Maybe because of my upbringing, I was never outgoing or charming. I didn't talk much and preferred to bury myself in painting. I was obsessed with the feeling of holding a paintbrush in my hand. Every painting I created was like a friend I had personally shaped and brought to life, and I loved them all dearly. But my introversion, silence, and unusual family background made me an easy target for school bullying. The girls would tear up my drawings, break my brushes, and yank at my clothes while hitting me. One time, after they locked me inside the classroom, I sat among the scattered, torn pages of my work, eyes filled with tears. And then, as I was quietly sobbing, I heard a raspy teenage voice from behind me, "Shit." Startled, I turned around to see Neil, lazily slouched in his school uniform jacket, tousling his bedhead as he walked toward me with a furrowed brow. Back then, he was infamous, the king of the school's troublemakers. I immediately apologized without thinking, "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were sleeping here." He bent down, picked up a torn piece of paper, and cut me off, "Van Gogh's Starry Night." I was stunned. I couldn't believe he recognized what I was drawing from just a scrap. For a moment, my surprise outweighed my fear. "Yes? How did you know?" He just gave a short, mocking laugh and tossed the paper onto my desk. "Not bad. The drawing's good. But you're too damn useless. They bully you, and you just let them." So, he knew. I lowered my head. My lips moved slightly, but no words came out. He slung his backpack over one shoulder, shoved one hand into his pocket, and kicked open the classroom door. Bang! Neil turned back toward me, annoyed. "Let's go," he said. 6 years have passed since that day, and yet I still remember the evening sky, how the vast swathes of pink and purple bled across the horizon like brushstrokes on a canvas, each one breathtakingly beautiful. But I didn't have the time to admire it. Because all I could see was the rebellious spark in his eyes. And just like that, I fell. Neil was always a player. The girls around him changed constantly, each more beautiful than the last. I knew I had nothing to do with someone like him, so I kept my feelings hidden for years, quietly watching him from afar. I even chose to attend the same university as him, even though my test scores far exceeded the admission requirements. Over time, since we were old classmates, Neil and I gradually grew closer. I slowly became part of his life, drinking with him after breakups, riding motorcycles with him when he skipped class, and taking notes for him when he dozed off during lectures. I thought, maybe, just maybe, one day he might finally notice me. I draped an arm over my eyes and forced a bitter smile. But in the end, the only label he gave me was, simp. The next day, I didn't show up to accompany Neil to class. He stopped me in the hallway, as if it were perfectly natural to do so. Why didn't you come take notes for me today? He was still as handsome as ever. Over the years, Neil had grown like a weed. Standing at 188 centimeters in a black baseball jacket, his good looks had long outgrown the boyish charm of his teenage years. But this time, that face no longer brought me joy. I used to think his casual attitude toward me was a sign of intimacy. I'd even secretly felt giddy over it. But now, I realized he just saw me as a dog, one he could call over or shoo away whenever he pleased. I didn't answer his question. Instead, I asked, Neil, where's the painting I gave you? A flicker of panic flashed across his face, gone in an instant. Why are you asking about that? You gave it to me. It's mine now. Don't tell me you want it back. I lowered my gaze to my toes and said quietly, yeah. I changed my mind. I want it back. Neil turned his face away, his tone a little awkward. I brought it home already. Just paint another one. I shook my head stubbornly. No. I want that one. Of course, I knew he didn't have it anymore. I just wanted to hear him say it out loud. Neil went quiet for a moment. Then, frustration and embarrassment crept into his voice. What the hell is wrong with you? I told you, it's at home and I can't get it back. It's just a crappy painting. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? Just then, the campus belle walked by and naturally linked her arm with his. Beaming, she said, Neil, you promised to take me for a ride, did you mean it? He paused, then smiled and wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Of course I did. Let's go. As they brushed past me, I heard him mutter under his breath. What a buzzkill. It was meant for me, no doubt. If it had been before, I would have panicked and tried to appease him right away. But this time, I just felt tired. I didn't want to chase after him anymore. Just as I turned to leave, a deep voice called out behind me. Pretty warrior? I froze, that was my eBay username. Turning around, I saw a tall boy in a white button-down shirt standing not far away, holding a large flat package. Every girl passing by couldn't help but turn to look at him, whispering, pointing, some even taking out their phones to snap photos. He had sharp, cold features, a defined jawline, and a high nose bridge. His appearance was naturally aloof and striking, but the beauty mark under his eye and his crimson lip softened him with an unexpected touch of tenderness. I recognized him instantly, George, from the computer science department. He was so famous that probably no one on campus didn't know who he was. Someone once tallied the school confession wall and found that George had appeared on it more times than Neil, by over a dozen mentions. That unofficially made him the school heartthrob in our private discussions. But we had never interacted before. How did he know my eBay username? I thought I'd misheard, but he walked straight over and handed me the package. Your painting. My eyes widened. You're George Lucky and Happy? You're not a girl? My expression was a mess of confusion. Wait, was George secretly into cross-dressing or something? Before I could say more, he clarified, that's my sister's account. She couldn't make it, so I came to deliver the painting. It was my first time speaking to George, and the weight of all the curious stares around us made me quickly accept the painting. Thanks a lot. George nodded. It's a beautiful painting. I hadn't expected someone like him to compliment me. Caught off guard, I felt a little flustered. But he said nothing more and turned to leave. It wasn't until he had walked away that I suddenly realized. I'd never posted a picture of myself online. How did he recognize me? I thought about it all the way back to the dorm, but couldn't figure it out. So I just hugged the painting tight and went home. The next day, I still didn't go looking for Neil. We had rarely fought before, because our relationship had always been built on my endless compromises. If there was ever any unpleasantness, I was always the one to lower my head and make peace. But this time, I stayed silent, and he came looking for me. After class, Neil grabbed my hand and dragged me into the hallway, frowning. You know George? Before I could answer, he gave a sarcastic smile. Oh, so that's why you haven't been showing up in class lately. Found yourself a better catch, huh? He went on, Susan, are you serious? Do you even know who George is? Let me tell you, his family owns half the five-star hotels in the city. They're loaded. You better not start having delusions. You and him aren't from the same world. You really think he'd be into someone like you? The contempt and malice in his eyes were sharp, like knives stabbing into my heart. I looked up at him. I had liked this person for such a long, long time. Liked him so much that every time I saw him, my heart would fill with joy. But now, the face I used to love so deeply had become unrecognizable, and it hurt so much I could barely breathe. I used every ounce of strength I had to hold back the sting in my eyes, refusing to let the tears fall. My voice trembled as I said, Neil, you're such a bastard. That was the end of everything between us. After I hurled that insult, Neil stared at me in disbelief, then, furious, he slammed a fist into the hallway wall and stormed off. He never contacted me again. And I didn't reach out either. I figured, being called a bastard by the simp who had followed him around for so long must have been too much for his inflated ego to handle. But honestly, I was exhausted by this so-called relationship. It was a relief to let it go. Still, because Neil had a habit of skipping classes, he had enrolled in all the same electives as me so I could cover for him when the professor took attendance. So, I had no choice but to keep seeing him. Strangely, he'd started showing up to class more frequently, probably because I wasn't there to keep him posted anymore. But every time I saw him, he was with a different beautiful girl. Just from what I'd seen, there was the belle of the foreign languages department, the star of the finance department, and several others I couldn't even place. He clearly had a type, slim waists, long legs, sharp features, all cookie-cutter stunning. Unlike George, who was quiet and composed, Neil was a well-known playboy. There was never a shortage of girls around him, but none ever lasted more than a few days. Still, with a face like his, even girls who knew better kept throwing themselves at him. One day outside the classroom, I ran into him again. He had his arm around a curvy girl in a flowy dress, her wavy hair cascading down her back. I'd seen her name pop up on the campus confession wall countless times. She was Iris from the dance department, and even as a girl myself, I had to admit her figure was hard not to notice. As Neil walked past me, he didn't even spare me a glance. It was as if I didn't exist. But from the tightness of his jaw, I could tell he wasn't in a good mood. It no longer had anything to do with me, though. I ignored him and headed into the classroom. My roommate leaned in and whispered, "Did you two have a fight?" I kept my head down, flipping through my textbook. No. It wasn't exactly a fight. I'd just decided I didn't want to be a simp anymore. No way, she said, glancing at Neil. He's glaring at you. You two used to be practically glued together, he took you everywhere. What happened? Why isn't he with you now? I didn't answer. Maybe to outsiders, Neil and I had looked close. I used to think that too. But now I saw it for what it was, he just found it convenient to have me around. I took notes for him in class, helped with assignments, kept him company when he was bored. I even bought his breakfast every morning. At best, I'd just been a glorified babysitter. I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination, but I could feel a burning gaze on my back, like someone was trying to scorch two holes through me. My roommate glanced behind us, then said nothing. Just then, the classroom suddenly quieted, and a shadow fell across my desk. I looked up and froze. George was standing in front of me, hands in his pockets. He glanced at the empty seat beside me and asked, his voice low and deep, "Is this seat taken?" Every head in the room snapped in our direction. I paused for half a second, then, while my roommate nearly crushed my arm in excitement, I tried to stay composed. No. It's not. George nodded and sat down next to me as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I could feel the stares shifting between me, Neil, and George, some curious, some jealous, like we were caught in some love triangle drama. Feeling awkward, I tried to make small talk. "I don't think I've seen you before. Are you also taking art history?" To my surprise, George wasn't as aloof and distant as the rumors made him out to be. In fact, his voice had a rich, magnetic quality. When he leaned closer to speak, it was almost sexy. "My sister is taking it," he said. "She's busy right now, so I'm attending in her place and taking notes for her." "I haven't taken this course before," he added. "Where did the class leave off?" My roommate looked like her eyes were about to pop out of her head. I could feel the flood of questions she was holding back, practically vibrating beside me, throwing me interrogative glances. I pretended not to notice and pulled out my notebook. "Why don't you let her borrow my notes? I've kept track of everything so far." "Thanks." As he flipped through the pages, he paused at a sketch I doodled during a lazy moment, sunflowers. He tilted his head toward me. "That's a beautiful drawing. Do you really like painting?" I blinked, then nodded slowly. Yes. I really did love painting. As a child, I had few friends and relatives who barely cared about me. Only my paintbrushes never abandoned me. But the moment I thought about the painting that had ended up on the internet, a pang of pain welled up again. I love it too, George said. There's a traveling art exhibit this weekend. They won't have Starry Night, but there'll be Monet's Impression, Sunrise and Pissarro's Avenue of the Forest. Want to go see it? I was stunned. On instinct, I pinched my thigh under the desk, hard. It hurt. Wait. Was George asking me out? The George who'd ruled the confession wall for 3 straight years? The untouchable, high up on the pedestal George? Was I still dreaming? My roommate clutched my arm in a death grip, her eyes practically beaming light like twin 3 million-watt bulbs. She looked like she was about to say yes for me by force. Seeing that I hadn't answered, George tilted his head and looked at me again. I'd love to. I swallowed hard, stammering like a rooster trying to crow. George chuckled. When expressionless, he seemed untouchable, cold as winter. But when he smiled, those lips naturally red, those thick, long lashes like inky feathers, it made my heart stutter and my eyes lose focus. Dear God. Even if I didn't have a crush on George, who wouldn't fall for that face? I didn't hear a single word of that lecture. My mind was stuck on just one phrase, traveling art exhibit. George had invited me out. Why? Did he like me? But when did he start liking me? Then I quickly scolded myself. Don't be delusional. Girls who like George could probably form a line around the campus. He couldn't possibly be into someone as invisible and average as me. He was probably just trying to be polite because I lent him my notes. A friendly gesture in return. That's all. Even as class ended, I was still dazed. George handed the notebook back to me. Whether intentionally or not, his cool, slender fingers brushed against mine, lingered for a second, then pulled away casually. A faint scent of tobacco mixed with mint drifted past my nose. My face flushed instantly. I shoved the notebook into my bag and bolted out of the room in a panic. Behind me, I barely caught the sound of his soft, amused laugh. This video is an original work of the YouTube channel Romance Grove and is published exclusively on this channel. Please don't re-upload or share it on other channels. Before things fell apart between me and Neil, I always felt like I didn't get to spend enough time by his side. But now, it seemed like I saw him everywhere. In the cafeteria, he still sat at the table where we used to eat together, but the person sitting beside him now wasn't me. It was Iris. I wanted to stay as far away from him as possible, but the cafeteria was crowded that day, and the only available seat happened to be at the table next to his. As I carried my tray over, Neil didn't even glance at me. Instead, he let out a cold snort and said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, TCH. Still haunting me, huh? My hand paused midair. I pretended I didn't hear. His group of buddies, who all knew our history and had clearly noticed our falling out, glanced at me and laughed in agreement. Yeah, some people really need to take a good look at themselves. You think clinging on like that actually works? A simp will always simp, and in the end up with nothing. Iris giggled, glanced at me as well, and then leaned closer against Neil like she was marking her territory. I lowered my lashes, and suddenly, the rice bowl I used to love felt dry and tasteless. I had already decided to let go of him, but hearing those words still stabbed at something deep inside. It was like a thorn buried too long in my flesh, no longer sharp, but always aching when touched. Then one of Neil's friends suddenly burst out laughing again. Speaking of simps, I saw this post on Weibo the other day. Some girl spent 3 months painting something for her crush. Even hid a love letter inside. And guess what? The guy didn't even look at it, just threw it on eBay. The address said it came from our school. He laughed harder. You guys know what the listing said? A simp's gift. Selling cheap. Ha 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 ha, this school really breeds simps. My fingers clenched around the spoon until they hurt. But this time, Neil didn't laugh with them. Among all the people at that table, he was the only one sitting frozen, not moving a muscle. After a moment, he turned to the guy and asked quietly, that painting, what did it look like? His friend shrugged carelessly. I don't remember. Just something I scrolled past. Think it was called Starry something? A copy of Van Gogh or Picasso or whatever. He wasn't finished yet. The funniest part? That simp actually saw the post herself and went to buy the painting back. Suddenly, Neil stood up violently, sending his tray and dishes clattering to the floor with a loud crash. Everyone around them jumped in shock. Bro, Neil. What the hell? But he didn't respond. He just stared straight at me, his face pale, a flicker of panic in his expression. Susan. He called out. But I couldn't take it anymore. I picked up my tray and walked away. Again and again, my feelings had been trampled on like they were nothing. I really didn't understand why the word simp existed at all. Was it really wrong to love someone? All those youthful heart flutters, all those sleepless nights, all the unspoken emotions. Were they only worthy of being dismissed as trash? I didn't look back at Neil. I didn't even finish my meal. I fled the cafeteria as fast as I could. Later that night, as I was reading, my phone suddenly rang. It was Neil. I bit my lower lip, hesitated for a moment, and declined the call. But he was relentless, calling again and again. That was just how he was. Once he wanted something, he had to get it. If I didn't answer, who knew what stunt he'd pull tonight? I sighed and finally picked up. What do you want? I'm downstairs. Come down. He always spoke to me like that, like he was giving orders. I frowned. If it's something important, just say it over the phone. I'm busy. Surprisingly, he didn't snap back this time. His voice was quiet, almost subdued. It's not something I can explain in a few words. Just come down, please. With no other choice, I slipped on my slippers and headed downstairs. Neil was standing there in a black tank top, lean but toned. The kind of build that turned heads, and sure enough, girls walking by kept glancing at him. What do you want? I asked, tearing my eyes away. He looked down, hesitating for a moment before running a hand through his hair in frustration. That painting? I didn't sell it. I had too many things piling up, so I asked a friend to help handle them. All that stuff he wrote, it was just a joke. Don't take it seriously. I was taken aback. Neil was explaining himself? Coming from someone like him, wasn't his usual response supposed to be, so what if I sold it? Why do I owe you anything? If it had been the old me, I probably would have forgiven him already, gone back to his side, resumed my role as the simp everyone mocked. But now, I didn't want to anymore. Softly, I asked, what difference does it make? Whether it was you or your friend who sold it, what's the difference? If he'd cared even the slightest about that painting, he wouldn't have handed it off without a second glance. Of course, Neil was still Neil. He quickly lost his patience. I've already explained everything. Do you really need to keep harping on about this? You bought the painting back, didn't you? Fine, how about this? I'll buy it back from you. Happy now? I stared at him in silence. Did Neil know he'd done something wrong? Of course he did. He wasn't stupid. But from beginning to end, not once had he apologized. Because to him, I wasn't worth the effort. To someone like me, a clingy simp, an apology wasn't necessary. I was supposed to linger at his side no matter how he treated me. Maybe in his mind, even giving me this much of an explanation was already him lowering himself. I let out a soft sigh. There's nothing I'm clinging to. Then why haven't you come to find me lately? He asked, brows furrowed. The night breeze tousled my hair. I tucked a strand behind my ear, suddenly feeling very tired. I just figured something out. Neil, chasing after you is exhausting. I don't think we're suited to be friends. I couldn't find a better word than friends, but the truth was, we weren't really friends to begin with. It had always been a one-sided effort from me, trying to hold things together. But even a rubber band snaps when stretched too far. And I'm human. I get tired, too. Neil's face darkened instantly. And as expected, he snapped back with a sneer, Susan, I was really too kind to you. Friends? You think someone like you deserves to be my friend? When I stayed silent, his expression turned even colder. You think I give a damn about being around you? I've been sick of your clingy shadow for a long time. Perfect. From now on, whoever reaches out first is a damn loser. With that, he pulled out his phone and, right in front of me, blocked me on every single platform. Then he cursed under his breath and stormed off. But it wasn't over yet. When I got back to my dorm, my roommate hurried up to me, her expression serious. You pissed off Iris? I blinked, confused. What? No, I don't even know her. She handed me her phone. She posted a story, she uploaded that Weibo post about the painting you gave Neil. And your love letter too. Someone must have taken a screenshot. Your name was blurred out in the letter, but the way she wrote it, she basically made it obvious it was you. She looked at me cautiously. Now people are commenting like crazy, don't mind them, they're just jerks. Do you want to talk to Iris and ask her to delete it? It took me a few seconds to process her words. Then I grabbed the phone. Sure enough, Iris had posted, got a painting for my boyfriend's birthday, and it came with a love letter. He didn't even look at it, just listed it on eBay. What an idiot. Poor girl though, I heard she spent over 3 months painting it. Everyone knew she was dating Neil, so it didn't take much for people to figure out I was the one who painted it. The comments poured in, I used to always see Susan trailing behind Neil. Thought they were a couple. Turns out she was just a simp all along. Ugh, kind of mean to say that. She clearly put effort into the gift. Simp never gets the house. Learn the rule. Yeah, between Iris and Susan, even a fool knows which to pick. Who gave her the nerve? A chill spread across my body. My fingers trembled as I clutched the phone. How could she do this to me? Soon after, classmates started messaging me one after another. A few girls even came by the dorm pretending to be concerned, but they were really just fishing for gossip. Was that letter really yours? Did you really paint that for Neil? Are you okay? I was so flustered I didn't even bother changing. I just bolted from the building and kept running. I didn't stop until my legs gave out and I found myself by the artificial lake. My face was hot and wet with tears. I found a large rock and sat down, curling up with my head buried in my knees, choking on quiet sobs. How did things end up like this? I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was love someone sincerely. Why did I deserve this kind of humiliation? The night wind mixed with lake mist, sneaking into my bones with its biting chill. I was cold. I was miserable. I was a mess. Then, gently, a jacket was draped over my shoulders, still warm from someone else's body. Startled, I looked up to see George in a black shirt, 2 buttons undone, revealing his elegant collarbones. What are you doing here? My voice was thick with congestion. He paused before replying, I saw you run out of the dorm earlier. Figured you needed time to calm down, so I didn't call out. I don't know why, but hearing him say that, in that moment of helplessness, made my eyes sting all over again. I'd spent years by Neil's side. And all he gave me was sorrow and scars. But George, someone I barely knew, was already so kind to me. He sat down beside me, not caring whether the rock was dusty or cold, and said naturally, Are you crying because of Neil? I remember you two were always together. I lowered my head and stayed silent. He continued, Anyone who makes you cry isn't worth your tears. Moonlight spilled across the lake, glittering and shattering along the ripples. George turned slightly to face me. His gaze was sincere. Susan, you're a good person. You have to learn to love yourself. Don't cry over someone else. In that moment, his eyes reflected the moonlight, and me. Everything else, Neil, Iris, all the mockery, faded away. All I could see was this man sitting in front of me. George leaned closer, his gaze unwavering. I could even smell the faint trace of tobacco and mint between his lips. The night was cold by the lake, but my whole body was heating up, my heartbeat thundering in my chest. Just as his lips were about to touch mine, I shot to my feet in a panic. I think I should go back now. What the hell? Was he really about to kiss me just now? But we've only just met. How is that even? God, his face is lethal. I almost fell for it too. George paused for a beat, then looked up at me. He stood slowly, as if nothing had happened. Come on, I'll walk you back. The air between us had grown awkward, so on the way back I racked my brain to find something to say. Hey, back when we first met, how did you recognize me? George smiled slightly. Pretty warrior? My sister told me who you were. I frowned a little. So, you knew me before? We've met? He went quiet. After a long moment, he finally spoke in a soft voice. In high school, back of the art room. There was always someone in a black hoodie. Remember that? I froze. Back in high school, life had been hard for me. I often hid in the art room, losing myself in the colors and brushstrokes. There was always a boy in a black hoodie sitting in the last row, hood up, messy hair always falling over his eyes. I couldn't remember his face. Just that he painted with his left hand, fingers long and elegant, always holding half a cigarette between two of them. He'd nap in the art room, then wake up and paint. By the time the other students had all gone home, it would often be just the two of us left. His lines were precise, but his use of color was terrible. Eventually, I couldn't stand it anymore and walked over to say softly, You need to mix 3 kinds of red here. This color's not quite right. He lifted his head, bangs still covering his eyes. But his voice surprised me, it was gentle and smooth. Which 3? I pursed my lips and mixed the color for him using my own brush. After that, we painted together often. I was socially anxious, and he rarely spoke. Even after painting together for several months, we didn't even know each other's names. Yet somehow, I felt as if our souls were connected through our brushes. The only things I remembered about him were his messy bangs and his beautiful voice. That might have been the only time in high school I felt like I had something close to a friend. Unfortunately, he left soon after. I heard he transferred to a different school to better prepare for college entrance exams. We never exchanged contact info. The only thing he left behind in the art room was one painting, a sunflower we had mixed colors for together. That was you? I exclaimed. Where did you go after that? George gave me a look. It was hard to describe, there was something like resentment in that glance. I blinked. What's wrong? I left my contact info in that painting. It was in the inner layer, he said quietly. But you never reached out. When I saw you at school later, I recognized you, but you didn't recognize me. And you were always with that guy, so I didn't want to interfere. I was stunned. So much time had passed. I only remembered that painting was beautifully done, with gorgeous colors. After he left, I had been heartbroken for a long time. Eventually, I stopped going to the art room altogether. I had wanted to ask the teacher if I could take the painting home, but when I returned the next day, it was gone. I never found out who had taken it. And now I knew, he had hidden his contact info inside the painting? So in the end, we had been thinking the same thing? George patted my shoulder gently. So don't feel too bad. You're not the only one who's ever painted something for someone, only to be ignored. I didn't know what to say. Embarrassed, I just lowered my head and murmured, oh. But deep down, in the most hidden part of my heart, a ripple of joy stirred. George had once left me his contact info? That was George, the George who had girls lining up around campus just to see him. That night, I didn't dream about Neil. Instead, I dreamed of young George, in a black hoodie, his face delicate and defined. He handed me that Starry Night painting and said, in a clear, youthful voice, Susan, you may not know me, but I've known you for a very, very long time. The next day, Iris deleted that post from her moments. I never found out why. Later, my roommate told me someone saw Iris and Neil have a huge fight. She ran out of the classroom crying. But honestly, I no longer cared. I thought George was right. If someone could make me cry, then they probably weren't worth my tears. I realized I needed to start focusing on myself more. What I didn't expect was Neil showing up at the girls' dorm that night. When he saw me, he immediately pulled me aside. Yesterday was my mom's death anniversary. Why didn't you come? I froze. That's right, yesterday had been his mom's Memorial Day. Neil's parents had both died when he was in middle school. His father's death was not exactly honorable. Rumor was that he died in the car while cheating, suffocated during the act, completely naked when they found him. His mother couldn't take the blow and jumped off a building. He was said to have been a pretty decent kid once. But after that, he spiraled. Ever since I'd been by his side, I always accompanied him on his mom's anniversary. I never said much, just sat with him in front of her grave. Sometimes, he would hold me, his body trembling. All those years, I had been the one to walk that road with him. But now, I thought he didn't need me anymore. And honestly, I didn't want to keep following behind him either. Neil looked furious. His cold fingertips brushed against my neck as he leaned in, his gaze dark and dangerous. Why weren't you with me? I called you so many times, and you blocked me. You actually had the nerve to block me. I frowned. I can't spend my whole life keeping you company. You should have asked your girlfriend to go with you. Neil froze for a second. Then, awkwardly, he said, I broke up with Iris. That's none of my business. I pushed past him and tried to leave, but he grabbed me again. Neil was too close. His grip was strong, almost frightening. Susan, are you still mad I dated her? I scoffed. If I had to get mad every time you had someone new, I'd be dead by now. You like me, don't you? He snapped, brows furrowed. Fine. I'll date you, okay? I was a little surprised by that. If it had been before, I probably would have jumped with joy. But now? Now I felt nothing. Just a vague sense of irony. I flung his hand off and sneered, no need to force it. I don't like you anymore. Neil smirked, a look of disbelief, and maybe mockery, on his face, as if thinking I was just clinging to my pride. Oh come on, Susan. Your biggest dream in life was to be with me, wasn't it? Don't you remember what you wrote in your love letter? You said we're all born with different shapes, but you'd become whatever shape fit me. His eyes were full of scorn, like he was looking at a pathetic lovesick fool. Or is it that now you're into George? You think he's better than me? I clenched my fists and met his gaze. You're trying to humiliate me, aren't you? So you really think liking you is something to be ashamed of? Neil froze. For a few seconds, his expression completely stiffened. I gave him a faint smile, turned around, and walked away. This time, he didn't try to stop me. From that moment on, I put all my energy into my studies. My GPA, already pretty good, soared even higher. George was right. Letting go of someone unworthy made loving myself feel even better. I picked up a bunch of electives, scored over 90 in every class, and steadily raised my GPA. I joined the art club and painted whenever I had time. I made sure I never let myself be idle. George and I went to an art exhibition. I saw so many paintings I had always loved but never seen in person, and the impact was overwhelming. Then I was selected for a student exchange program. I was preparing to spend a year in the UK. Yet just a few days before my departure, Neil showed up again. It was pouring that day, bitterly cold. He grabbed my shoulders, eyes red. You're leaving the country. Why didn't you tell me? I replied coldly, and who are you again? Why should I tell you anything? Neil gritted his teeth. Susan, you promised you'd never leave me. That promise came the first time I visited his mother's grave with him. He bit his lip until it bled, refusing to shed a single tear. Back then, I told him I'd always stay by his side. But now, Expressionless, I said, need me to remind you how you sold my painting and called me a pathetic simp afterward? He frowned. I told you already, that wasn't me, that was, never mind. Susan, can you not go? I looked at him, disappointed. After all this time, he hadn't changed at all. Still selfish. Still thinking only of himself. I turned to leave, but he grew more agitated and shouted from behind me, what do you want, huh? Isn't being with me what you wanted? Fine. I'll be with you. Why are you still so mad? I spun around and yelled, you never even understood what I wanted. You're always so self-centered, so damn selfish. Neil, loving you is the thing I regret most in my life. Neil and I always seem to end in arguments. But this time, he didn't walk away. The late autumn night was bitterly cold. Rain poured down from the sky in sheets. He just stood there, motionless. At first, I could see cigarette butts on the ground. But soon, the rain washed them away. At 2 a.m. I was woken by the chime of a text message. It was from an unfamiliar number. The message was long. Now I finally understand what you wanted. You wanted an apology. But I realized it too late. All these years, I selfishly enjoyed your company while pretending not to know how you felt about me. I was busy wasting my life, thinking that giving my heart to someone was dangerous. I'll never forget the day my mom made me her last meal and smiled as she sent me out the door. When I came back, all that was left was her cold body. So I was afraid to love. Especially when I realized my feelings for you had changed. That fear only made me act worse. I flaunted those girls in front of you. I pretended not to care. I tried to stay away, to stop liking you. But now I know how stupid I was. I thought you'd always be there. That no matter when I turned around, you'd still be waiting. But now I see, you'll leave too. These days have been awful. I can't stop thinking about you. I'm panicking. I can't take it anymore. Susan, I know I was horribly wrong. But could you give me one more chance? Let me make it up to you. I'm sorry. Please. I'm begging you. Give me back the painting. All my sleepiness vanished. I stared at the glowing screen, my eyes stinging slightly. Neil actually apologized. That was unexpected. No anger. No mockery. No arrogance. I even wondered if someone else had written the message for him. Clearly, life without me hadn't been kind to him. For him to lower himself and beg like this. He'd always been proud, never willing to bow his head. But he wasn't really asking for the painting back. He was asking for my heart. And once, I'd waited a long time for this day. Waited for his apology. Waited for him to like me. Waited for his gaze to finally land on me. I understood why Neil had turned out the way he did, like he said, it all stemmed from his family's tragedy. But so did I. Now I finally understood why I kept chasing after Neil. I'd grown up unloved. I was starved for affection. I clung to every thread, trying not to drown. I made Neil the center of my world because my life had once been nothing but emptiness. I desperately needed something to fill that void. So no matter how badly he treated me, I endured it. Because without him, my world would go back to being hollow. I'd have nothing left. But now, I'd figured it out. I shouldn't live my life for anyone else. Every second I breathe is already meaningful. I don't need anyone to fill the gaps in me. I can do it myself. Neil was wrong. He thought all I wanted was an apology. He didn't know, I stopped needing one a long time ago. Because I no longer cared. I typed a short reply, too long. Didn't read. Then I blocked the number. I'm not obligated to pay for someone else's tragedy. We each have our own path to walk. His hasn't been harder than mine. If I'm to pity anyone, it'll be myself. Neil and I, this is the end of the road. On the day of my departure, George came to see me off. He helped carry my luggage all the way to the security checkpoint. No, we weren't together. But I'd found a direction in life. I no longer needed someone else's affection to make me feel whole. I believed our relationship should follow its own course. If fate allows, we'll meet again someday. Just then, I got a message on my phone. Another unknown number. Goodbye, Susan. I wish you all the best. If you ever feel unhappy, come back anytime. I'll always be waiting. I smiled faintly and casually deleted both messages. Goodbye, I said, waving at George. He smiled. Take care of yourself. Eat well. Rest well. I'll miss you. I tried to act natural, not letting him see how reluctant I actually was to leave. But he just nodded and continued walking ahead, still holding my suitcase. I blinked. That's the security checkpoint. You can stop here. He grinned and pulled a ticket out of his pocket. I just happened to be traveling to the UK. Let's see, turns out we're on the same flight. What a coincidence. I was stunned. There was only one flight to the UK today. What kind of coincidence was that? Where's your luggage? He shrugged. My family has a place in the UK. Everything's already there. Got my passport and everything right here. So you watched me say goodbye all seriously, and you just stood there? I was actually sad. I fumed, snatching my suitcase back in mock anger. He raised both hands in surrender. My bad. It's just, seeing you reluctant to leave made me really happy. My face flushed red. I turned away, heading forward without another word. Hey, wait up. He took long strides to catch up to me. The sunlight shimmered through the dust, casting golden halos in the air. With my back to George, I couldn't help but smile. Whether or not we end up together, I'll always be thankful to him. Thank you, for teaching me how to love myself. And now, I'll keep moving forward, with certainty and strength.